Ever feel like you're like staring into a cosmic kaleidoscope?
Mm.
That's the feeling I get when I'm cracking open the Avatamsaka Sutra,
Yeah.
or, as it's so beautifully called, the flower ornament scripture.
Yeah.
And we're diving deep into it today.
Yes.
Really trying to unpack what makes this Mahayana Buddhist text so unique.
It's fascinating because it's not your typical, Buddha said
Right.
kind of text. It's not step-by-step instructions.
Right.
The flower ornament scripture drops you right into the mind-blowing reality of an enlightened being.
I'm hooked already. So it's like skipping to the end of the book,
Yes.
but in a good way.
Yeah.
So instead of listening to the Buddha teach,
Right.
who are we actually listening to in this universe of interconnected jewels reflecting infinite Buddhas?
It's like if you imagine a high-level philosophical debate,
Okay.
but instead of academics, it's like celestial beings.
Ooh.
Enlightened bodhisattvas with names like oceanic wisdom.
Right.
Even the cosmos itself is like chiming in.
Wow.
It's a chorus of perspectives, each adding a layer of richness.
So we've got this incredibly vivid world.
Mm-hmm.
We have this unique format. I mean, where do we even begin to unpack the actual teachings? Right. What sets the scripture apart?
It's all about experiencing the fruit of Buddhahood firsthand. So you're not just like learning about enlightenment, you're stepping into a reality where it's already happened.
Wow.
Think of it like comparing a travel brochure to actually being in that breathtaking landscape.
So instead of a guidebook, it's like a fully immersive 3D experience of enlightenment. I love that.
Yeah.
But for those of us who haven't quite reached Buddhahood yet,
Right.
how does this translate to understanding the text?
Right.
How do we make sense of all these intricate metaphors, these oceans of worlds held up by glittering jewels?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it.
How-
Every image, every metaphor in the flower ornament scripture,
Yeah.
it's not just there for poetic effect. They're like puzzle pieces.
Right.
Each holding this deeper meaning about the nature of reality, about interconnectedness, about the path to enlightenment.
Each jewel reflecting a facet of Buddhahood. I like it.
Yeah.
So it's our job as the reader to put together this dazzling puzzle. I mean, who are some of these voices guiding us through this tapestry of enlightenment? I'm dying to know more about these oceanic wisdom characters.
Yeah, well, let's take, for instance, the Celestial King, banner of delightful light of truth.
Okay, try saying that 5 times fast.
I know, right? And this majestic being addresses this vast assembly, explaining how cultivating this unwavering faith in the Buddha's guidance paves the path towards boundless joy.
Okay, so it's like a cosmic pep talk from royalty.
Right.
Assuring us that even amidst the vastness of the cosmos, joy and enlightenment are still attainable.
Right.
But this idea of a celestial king, preaching about faith and joy, that seems, I don't know, it seems a bit counterintuitive. Like, don't we usually think of kings as being more focused on earthly power?
Right.
How does that connect to this idea of Buddhahood?
That's a really interesting question. And the flower ornament scripture, it answers it in a really surprising way.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Flip the script for us.
Here, a king isn't about, wielding power over others.
Right.
It's about embodying and radiating wisdom, compassion, and ultimately enlightenment.
Okay.
So they become like a guide, a beacon, showing others the way to their own, inner potential.
So this banner of delightful light of truth, he's not, ruling through might.
Yes.
But through just the sheer force of his awakened state.
Exactly. And that ties into one of the flower ornament scriptures, most important teachings, this concept of Buddha's mystic power.
Okay.
And this isn't about magic tricks, supernatural feats, Buddha snapping his fingers and making a lotus bloom.
Right.
It's about recognizing the boundless potential that lies dormant within every single being.
Wow. So we each have this incredible power source within just waiting to be tapped into.
Exactly.
But how do we access this power source? It's not like we can just flip a switch, right?
You're right. It's not that simple.
Yeah.
The flower ornament scripture makes it clear this Buddha's mystic power.
Right.
It's directly related to cultivating certain qualities within ourselves.
Right.
Particularly knowledge and wisdom.
Okay.
And it's not just about accumulating facts. It's about developing this deep, experiential understanding of the true nature of reality.
So instead of just reading about enlightenment, we need to actively cultivate it within ourselves.
Yes.
But with a text as complex multifaceted as this one.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin?
Well, the scripture offers this beautiful image to illustrate this point.
Okay.
It says, the Buddha cultivated an ocean of myriad blessings, pure, vast, without any bounds.
Okay, stop right there. That quote always gives me chills.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful image. But how does this ocean of blessings, how does it connect to us? Like, how does it connect to the listeners, in a practical way?
Think of it this way. If the Buddha, through his dedicated practice, and deep insight, cultivated such boundless wisdom and compassion, then it stands to reason that we can too.
Okay.
It's a reminder that this potential isn't some far off, unattainable state,
Right. Yeah.
It's within our grasp, but it requires effort.
Right. Dedication and a willingness to look within.
It's like we all have this vast, untapped potential within.
Yeah.
Like a seed waiting for the right conditions to sprout and grow.
And just like a seed needs water and sunlight to flourish, right?
Right.
Our inner potential needs to be nurtured through practice, understanding, and right action.
So it's about cultivating that inner garden, so to speak.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned right action.
Yeah.
And this brings to mind another key theme, I think, in the flower ornament scripture, this idea of dedication.
Yes.
What does that look like in this context? Because it's more than just lighting incense or offering flowers, right?
You're spot on.
Yeah.
In the flower ornament scripture, dedication is presented as like a way of life.
A way of aligning your every action with the intention of reaching enlightenment, not just for yourself, but for all beings.
Wow.
Every action, no matter how small, has the potential to become an act of service on this path.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this text, it goes beyond just theoretical concepts.
Yes.
And provides us with this blueprint for living a more awakened life. But that can seem overwhelming.
Right.
Like, where do we even begin?
Right.
And thankfully, I hear the flower ornament scripture, provide some specific steps.
It does, yes. It outlines what are known as the 10 dedications, which you can think of as guiding principles for cultivating generosity, wisdom, compassion.
Okay, 10. That seems like a lot to tackle.
It is. It is.
Is there one or two that you think really encapsulate the essence of this practice?
Well, one that stands out is the dedication to cultivate a mind free from anger and hatred.
Easier said than done, am I right?
Definitely. But, the text doesn't shy away from these challenging ideals.
Yeah.
Another really powerful dedication is to cultivate a deep understanding of impermanence, which is really about seeing the ever-changing nature of reality and ourselves within it.
These are definitely practices that require commitment and constant attention.
Absolutely.
But if we can even, inch closer to embodying these dedications, it seems like the rewards are immeasurable.
Absolutely. And remember, the flower ornament scripture, it's not about achieving some perfect state overnight.
Right.
It's about embarking on this journey of self-discovery and transformation, step by step, lifetime after lifetime.
A journey that unfolds over countless eons, apparently.
Right.
Which reminds me, we have to touch upon the 10 stages of enlightenment.
Yes.
Or boonies, as they're known in Mahayana Buddhism.
Now, the flower ornament scripture, it doesn't go into detail about all 10 stages.
Right.
But it focuses on some of the most advanced ones.
Okay.
It speaks about the stage of immovability, where these enlightening beings are so rooted in their understanding, so unshakable in their wisdom, that no external force or challenge can sway them from their path.
That's next level resilience right there.
I mean, right.
I can only imagine what kind of challenges these beings have faced on their path to reach that level of, unshakable peace.
Exactly. It really underscores the dedication and perseverance required on this path. The text also briefly touches upon the 9th stage, characterized by such profound knowledge and boundless compassion that these beings can effortlessly teach and guide others toward enlightenment.
It's mind-boggling to think about the vastness of this path.
Yeah.
Reaching those advanced stages, that's got to take some serious dedication.
Right.
It makes our human struggles feel kind of, small in comparison.
It can definitely feel that way, but here's the thing. The flower ornament scripture, it's not meant to make us feel, inadequate or overwhelmed by the journey ahead.
Right.
It's about recognizing the boundless potential within us. reminding us that even if we're not a celestial king or a ninth stage bodhisattva, we still have within us the seeds of that same enlightenment.
So instead of focusing on how far we have to go, it's about celebrating each step we take in the right direction?
Exactly.
That's actually really encouraging.
Yeah.
But it still begs the question, how do we cultivate those qualities, that lead to those advanced stages? What tools does the flower ornament scripture offer us?
One of the most powerful tools, and this might surprise you, is the power of concentration. Now, when we say concentration, we're not just talking about focusing on a task or blocking out distractions, although that's part of it. The scripture highlights concentration as a way of perceiving the true nature of reality, a way of seeing beyond the surface level of things.
Okay, hold on. Concentration as a way to unlock a deeper understanding of reality.
Yes.
That does not sound like the kind of concentration I struggle with in school.
Right.
Give me an example. How does this actually work?
Well, the flower ornament scripture describes 10 concentrations, each offering a unique lens through which to experience the world. One of these concentrations, for instance, allows you to perceive the interconnectedness of all things, to see how everything is interwoven in this intricate web of cause and effect.
Wow, talk about expanding your perspective.
Right.
It's like suddenly being able to see the matrix.
Another concentration helps you understand the impermanence of all phenomena, which, as we touched upon earlier, is a key step on the path to liberation. Yeah. And another concentration enables you to see the world through the eyes of compassion, to feel the suffering and joy of others as your own.
So through these different concentrations, you're not just changing your focus.
Yes.
You're fundamentally shifting your perception of reality.
Yes.
It's like upgrading your mental software
to
experience a whole new dimension of existence.
Exactly.
It's fascinating how the flower ornament scripture manages to connect these seemingly simple practices like concentration to such profound shifts in awareness.
It all comes back to recognizing that power within, that potential that lies dormant within each of us. And this naturally leads us to one of the most, I think, fascinating aspects of the flower ornament scripture. Its unique perspective on the manifestation of the Buddha.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Right.
Because this is where the flower ornament scripture really diverges from, other Buddhist texts.
Exactly.
It's not your typical, origin story.
Right. Instead of portraying the Buddha's awakening as this single event, this scripture presents it as an ongoing process, driven by the collective actions and good deeds of all beings.
Hold on. So you're saying that the Buddha's presence in the world isn't a fixed event in history, but something that's constantly being renewed and sustained by our collective actions. That's a powerful concept.
It is.
It makes it feel much more immediate, more relevant to our lives right now.
Precisely. And to illustrate this concept, the flower ornament scripture uses this beautiful metaphor. It compares the Buddha's teachings to rain falling from clouds.
I'm sensing another puzzle piece about to fall into place.
The clouds, you see, they represent the collective good deeds and positive karma generated by all beings. As these acts of kindness, compassion, and wisdom, they accumulate, they create a kind of spiritual atmosphere. Just like clouds forming in the sky.
So the more positive energy we put out into the world, the more fertile the ground becomes for the Buddha's teachings to take root and flourish.
Exactly.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
But if these teachings are like rain, nourishing all beings equally, why do we see so much suffering and disparity in the world? Why doesn't everyone benefit from this spiritual rain in the same way?
That's a really, really insightful question. And the flower ornament scripture, it addresses this very point. It says, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, the rain of the Buddha's teachings falls equally on all beings. But just like rain falling on a mountain, some of it might nourish a field of flowers, while some might land on rocky ground, unable to penetrate.
So it's not that the Buddhist teachings are selective or partial, but our own capacity to, receive and benefit from them, it varies. Our internal landscape determines how much nourishment we can actually absorb.
Exactly. The scripture really emphasizes this, that our actions, our karma, our past conditioning, All these factors create a kind of inner landscape that can either be really receptive to the teachings or resistant to them. It's like you can plant the same seed in two different types of soil, and one might thrive while the other one just, withers.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not enough to just, wait for the rain to fall.
Right.
We have to actively cultivate that fertile inner ground where these teachings can take root and blossom.
You got it. And that's really the heart of the flower ornament scripture's message, It's not just about admiring the beauty of enlightenment from afar. It's about doing the inner work, clearing away the debris of our limiting beliefs, our negative patterns, so we can create the conditions for our own awakening.
It's like we're all gardeners tending to our own, little plot of consciousness.
Exactly.
Trying to cultivate those qualities of wisdom, compassion, and ultimately Buddhahood.
Yes.
But it's comforting to know we're not alone in this.
No.
We have these incredible teachings, these guides, these celestial beings cheering us on, reminding us of our own potential.
And that brings us to, I think, a really crucial point. Remember how we talked about Buddha's mystic power at the beginning of our dive?
Yes.
Well, the flower ornament scripture teaches that Buddha is omnipresent.
Okay, unpack that for us. What does it really mean for Buddha to be omnipresent?
It means that the potential for awakening, for experiencing the truth of reality, it's not confined to some, far-off realm, or reserved for a select few. It's here and now, woven into the fabric of existence, accessible to everyone.
So it's not about, striving to become like Buddha, but realizing that we already embody that potential within us.
Yes.
Wow.
And that's a really powerful and liberating idea. And if you can start to see the world through that lens, recognizing that Buddha nature within ourselves and all beings, it fundamentally changes how we interact with ourselves, with others, with the world around us.
It's like suddenly seeing the world in HD, right?
Yes.
With all of its, complexities and interconnectedness. And realizing that even in the midst of, suffering and challenges, there's this underlying perfection, this potential for awakening that's always present.
Precisely. And that's the beauty of a text like the flower ornament scripture. It doesn't shy away from the vastness and complexity of reality. But it also offers us this path, this way forward, this way to navigate that complexity with wisdom, with compassion, and ultimately with a sense of joy.
This deep dive has been quite a journey.
It has.
We've explored intricate metaphors, we've met celestial kings.
We have.
We've unlocked hidden dimensions of concentration.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
But I think what really sticks with me is this idea of Buddha's mystic power.
Yes.
Not as some, supernatural ability, right? But as this boundless potential that resides within each and every one of us.
Within all of us.
It's a call to action. It's an invitation to cultivate our own inner gardens.
Absolutely.
And contribute to the collective awakening of all beings.
Beautifully said. And, if you take away anything from our exploration today, let it be this. The flower ornament scripture, it's not just a text to be read. It's an experience to be lived,
I love that.
So I encourage you to revisit the parts that resonated with you. Sit with the imagery, allow its wisdom to unfold within you.
And remember, this deep dive, it's only scratched the surface of this incredible text.
It really has.
Who knows what other treasures you might uncover as you continue your exploration. Happy reading.